What is up? I'm Shelby Bumgarner, and I'm a junior on the field hockey team, and this is the second episode of True Blue, a podcast of the Blue Devil Network to shed light on what makes student athletes here at Duke human. Today is a very important episode because we have a legendary athlete and student on campus, Emily Cole. Emily Cole is a student athlete on the track team from Houston, Texas. Not only is Emily an All-ACC first and second team member, All-ACC silver medalist, 3-time All-American in track, and 2-time qualifier for the USA Championships in steeplechase. She's also built a successful career at the young age of 23 as she wrote and published a best-selling book called The Player's Plate during her time at Duke. Today, we're going to talk about her passion for track, her book, The Player's Plate, and her successes in NIL and social media. Let's get into it. Hi, Emily.
Hello, Shelby. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
We are so excited, truly. This is a very, very special guest for all of us.
I am honored. I saw the first episode, and I was so excited whenever you texted me and asked if I wanted to come on. I was like, absolutely yes.
Oh, yes. All right, let's get into it. So you grew up in Houston. You're a Texas girl. Tell me about growing up in Texas and how it's built you today.
H-Town till I drown, for sure.
Oh, gosh.
I love having H-Town roots. I get asked a lot if I would want to move back to Texas, and I don't think that I would because my parents will kind of always live in Houston, so I know I can always go back and visit them, but I love being from the same city as Beyonce and getting to say that. She's such an icon, and it was such a great place to grow up, especially such a sports hub, too.
Your sisters, I know, are very important to you, Kristen and Julia. Yeah. Kristen, I believe, went to Duke.
She did, yes.
And then Julia was also an athlete and now is a well-known country singer. Tell me about your relationship with them and what they mean to you.
Yeah, I mean, my sisters are my best friends. They definitely have inspired me to just try and live up to the standards that they set for my entire life. They are both such incredible people. Kristen is definitely more finance-oriented. She went here and majored in econ. And she actually has a baby on the way. So I'm going to be an aunt soon, which I'm super excited about. I'm so excited. And Julia, yeah, she's crushing her career in Nashville. She's actually putting out a new album right now, and everything's been doing really well. So I'm just really proud of her and inspired by both of them.
How did you get into track?
The high school coach, Coach McGuire, actually got hired, and it was going to be his first year, my freshman year of the high school. And he came to us when I was in 8th grade and kind of spoke to our little PE class because we didn't have, school sports for middle school. And he was just talking about the program that he wanted to build and the culture that he wanted to build. And he actually came in and pulled me aside. He was like, hey, you've run it was like 5:45 in the mile and you don't run year round. I would really love to have you as a part of the cross country team. And I was like, no way. I'm so sorry. It's not going to happen. And then he convinced me to go out to a few of the summer practices after that 8th grade year. And I ended up letting him convince me to try and do cross country and volleyball at the same time my freshman year. So that was a lot. I was going to cross country practice in the morning and volleyball after school. I really just was not enjoying running because I was spreading myself so thin. And my sophomore year, I actually ended up quitting cross country.
No way.
So I did volleyball and didn't run, and then did basketball and track. And it wasn't until my junior year that I began learning more about nutrition and prioritizing my sleep and really started to fall in love with running. And so I was super late to the game because obviously a lot of people get recruited earlier on than that. And my senior year was whenever I ran the times that I needed to be able to run in college. But this was after when most people went through the recruiting process.
Yes, that's crazy.
So it was really funny because I actually have this iconic email strand with Coach Riley, who was the coach that recruited me here. I reached out to her a lot that summer, which was after my junior year. And I was like, just so you know, I was doing volleyball and basketball up until this year, and I'm going to focus on running now. And my mile PR was 5:11 before that. And that summer, I had run a 5 flat in a time trial. And I was like, I would really love to run in college. I'd love to come visit. And she just responded back and was like, here are our standards, which was 450. She gave really hard high school times. And she was like, sorry, I just don't think that Duke's going to be a good fit for you. And then I was like, okay, watch me work. And I just like didn't
My
respond.
goodness.
And then I went into my cross country season and I PR'd by like 2 minutes in the 5K. And then I was like, I emailed her again and I was like, by the way, I'm coming to visit Duke and I'd love to meet you and just like come say hi. And so it was an unofficial visit. I came and met her and the assistant coach and, you know, got to run at practice with the girls. And after she met me in person, kind of really realized what I was really about and saw me run with the girls, she actually offered me a spot on the team and like offered me to come back for an official visit. So it's definitely a tried and true story of like, if you set your mind to something, you can do it and don't take no for an answer.
I think it's inspiring because a lot of student athletes at Duke have this long recruiting trajectory
Right.
where like they start freshman year, and the fact that you had a different path is so inspiring, especially since how accomplished you are. Why were you so passionate about going to Duke in the first place?
I knew that academics were always what I had planned to go to college for, and that it would be really extremely difficult to get to go to a college that had the academic caliber that I wanted and be able to compete in sports. And so really until my senior year, I didn't even consider it a possibility that I'd be able to do sports in college or play sports in college. And I think that's what's made my journey so different than so many athletes, because a lot of college athletes, it's all they've been raised to want to accomplish. And, you know, they've worked towards it for so many years, whereas it was kind of a really last minute thing for me. And I really had to change a lot through that process. But I guess Duke specifically, to answer your question, I just loved the culture of the campus. I mean, I remember coming here to visit for Parents Weekend for my sister Kristen when I was in 4th grade. And my dad has this video of us like skipping along the sidewalk, like whistling together. And I'm, I don't know, 10 years old on Duke's campus. And I think what was really cool was watching all the different Duke UNC basketball games at home and crying whenever they lost as like a elementary and middle schooler. But not really ever setting it as my dream college. It was always Kristen's college. And it wasn't until I started taking visits for running and I met the team here that I really was like, wow, Duke is the place for me. And it was really just the girls on the team and the coaches and the culture that we have here. It's just unlike any other. And I'm so grateful to have gotten to spend the past 5 years here.
That's amazing. You say that you are very academically driven. You're a computer science major, which is respectfully one of the hardest majors at Duke. What do you plan on doing with your computer science degree?
Yeah, so I actually get asked this a lot. And so I have the major in computer science and the minor in economics. And so I would really love to take this degree and be able to have some sort of future in the health tech industry, whether that's more on the investment side or just continuing to do brand partnerships with companies like Therabody. I'm just really excited about how my degree in computer science can help me be in more of a leadership role in that industry and tie in my passions with the technology in it that has the potential to revolutionize the way we all view our own health and wellness. I really didn't decide until like the end of my sophomore year that I wanted to major in computer science, because the fall of my sophomore year was whenever I took my gap semester. That was during COVID. So I definitely started my major a little bit later, but I've loved it. I really just love the problem-solving nature of computer science and how it's a little bit more entrepreneurial. It reminds me a lot of sports because there are several different ways that you can solve a problem, and it's just so rewarding whenever you do get it right and your program actually works. But yeah, lots of long hours and a lot of hard work to get that major for sure.
So respectable, Emily, in so many ways. So go back to track. You really started to focus on nutrition, and then you really started getting the times that you needed to get into Duke. You also, unfortunately, had a health scare, which also led to your best-selling book. Can you illustrate a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So yeah, to give a little bit more context on the story, whenever I got to my junior year, I actually started learning a little bit more about nutrition and started understanding how to build a balanced meal. And it completely changed my relationship with running. Like, I just started feeling so much better. And so, yeah, that junior year, I started eating healthier. And what I didn't realize is that in Houston, it's super hot and really humid. And
You didn't realize that?
Yeah. I'm getting to what I didn't realize. I knew that part. But I am a super salty sweater as well. And so everyone is always like, make sure you're drinking so much water, make sure you're hydrating all day. And I mean, we're out doing these 8 a.m. summer practices and it's 90 degrees, 100 degrees by the time we finish. And so I'm just chugging water and I'm cooking all my own food. And naturally, because I'm cooking my own food, it didn't have a lot of sodium in it. And I had no idea what electrolytes were. And so for those who don't know, electrolytes are super important nutrients you're supposed to put in your water to help you get hydrated. And for your body to be able to actually absorb and utilize the water better, it's really important that you have sodium in the electrolytes, which is salt. And my cross country season was building up, and it was the first season where I felt like I was going to be able to actually run some times that would allow me to be able to run in college. And I was locked in, focused, going to bed at 8 p.m., waking up at 4 a.m. for 6 a.m. practice. And I just started feeling, for the first time in my life, depressed. And I didn't know at the time what those symptoms were. I just didn't want to hang out with my friends. I didn't even care about listening to music. I was really snappy and just low energy all the time. And what I didn't realize was that the concentration of sodium in my blood was being slowly depleted throughout those months. That was the first time that I qualified for state in anything. And I wasn't even close to qualifying for state in the years before. So I qualified for state in cross country, had a lot of pressure on myself to be one of the top 10 girls in Texas. And I was just feeling, pretty bad, but I was like, I'll get to rest after state. It'll be okay. And that weekend, we drove up to Austin for the state cross country meet, and I just started feeling sick. That night, I had been so sick that I depleted my sodium levels way more than they even were beforehand. And I was just drinking a bunch of water to rehydrate, making it even worse. And that night, I had gone to bed at like 8 p.m. My parents were there, and they had, been like, good night, we love you, we're gonna go get dinner with our friends. And they had asked my coach to come in with my roommate and check on me a couple of hours later. And he came in at, 9 p.m. and I was sleeping. And he could have let me keep sleeping, but instead he decided that he wanted to shake my shoulder and see how I was doing. And whenever he did that, I launched into convulsions and looked like I was having a seizure. So he called the ambulance, called my parents, and they obviously all came immediately. And I don't remember any of this. I actually remember hearing the paramedic during that time. I just remember it being black and him being like, hey, Emily, can you swing your legs off the side of the bed for me? What are your sisters' names? And yeah, I was in a coma for the next 48 hours. I completely slept through the entire state meet, and it was all because the concentration of sodium in my blood was so dangerously low. And so I kind of woke up from that coma and, was so grateful to God to be alive and that my coach had woken me up and tried to check on me, and really just woke up with a passion to create more awareness around the importance of sports nutrition education for high school athletes. You don't even have to be a college athlete or a professional athlete, but obviously it was something that I almost lost my life from, and it was as simple as putting electrolytes in your water. And I think the scariest part was, on the outside, I looked like I was doing everything right because I was eating super healthy and drinking a bunch of water, and I looked super fit and I was running fast. So on the outside, it looked like everything was going right. And it's just so amazing, all the movements we have now going on with mental health too, because whenever something is wrong. And, in my head, I knew that I wasn't the same person that I had been before. So yeah, that really inspired me to write this book. And it took me a couple of years to really find myself after that and make sure that I was in a place where I could find the words to say it in the way that I would have wanted to hear whenever I was in that position. My book, The Player's Plate, was totally inspired by this incident, and I just really wanted to create a simplified guide to sports nutrition through the lens of other elite athletes' stories that really would have helped me be able to avoid having this happen whenever I was in high school. That just teaches the fundamentals of sports nutrition. And I don't have a degree in sports nutrition. I'm not an expert. I interviewed a bunch of different elite athletes, gold medalists, Olympians, and asked them what they wish they had known at the beginning of their athletic careers, and taught one core sports nutrition concept through each of their stories. So each person has a chapter, and then at the end of the chapter, which is super fun, I actually have a recipe teaching you how to put into practice the lesson that you just learned. So my book is my baby, but I'm very proud of it, yeah.
That's absolutely incredible. Emily, thank you so much for sharing your story so eloquently.
Thank you.
It was amazing to hear, truly.
Thank you.
Tell me about the journey of writing and publishing your own book, which was published in November of 2022, if I'm correct, and also is a best-selling book.
It was a really hard process to go through on my own. The inspiration for the book at first was everyone in my high school class telling me that I should make a cookbook because I was always cooking. And it was so funny because I was trying to make these recipes and I was like, I really don't want to make 100 recipes and like nail down the perfect ingredients. That's not what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about why eating these foods makes you feel so good and helps you perform at your best, and the science behind sports nutrition, more so than the actual recipes. There are so many amazing recipes out there already that we can all use. It was more the why it makes you feel so good and can affect your performance. It took a lot longer than I thought it was going to. The cohort was supposed to publish, I think, in a semester or two, and I ended up having to defer it a few times because I was also competing and taking classes. I didn't realize how hard it would be once that gap semester ended and I came back to Duke and was having to do school. And I literally remember sitting in the back of a lecture hall and I was supposed to be listening, and I'm like editing this draft of one chapter because I had to get it submitted by Saturday. And it's just crazy because a lot of that I just went through on my own. I just kind of resonated with that because doing social media and writing my book, it was so much internal reflection and time alone. And I would definitely classify myself as more of an extroverted introvert because I love people and I love being around them, but getting to do all of these things like writing my book and creating my social media, that's a lot of alone time and a lot of time that you're having to sit back and reflect on what you want your message to be. And it was a really cool growing process for me that semester that I ended up publishing my book, my fall of my junior year. The spring of that year ended up being my best track season that I had. And I really think it was because going through my book really just grounded me in who I was and where I came from and why I do what I do. And it was just a really beautiful cherry on top to finishing that process. I was finishing my final edits of my book throughout that season, my junior year track season, and I kind of had a little fairy tale ending to that because we had ACC championships on our home track, and I had been working really hard on the more mental side of running, and I had a 30-second PR in the steeplechase on our home track, and I got the school record, and that was whenever I got to get the silver medal. And I just, having my book to write throughout that process, I contribute a lot of my success that season to that. Then I went on and that race actually ended up qualifying me for my first ever USA championships. And that was a lot because my junior year of high school, a little side story, whenever I started focusing on running, I knew that I loved the steeplechase. I was terrible at it. I mean, I face planted in the water pit. People are like, have you fallen? I'm like, have I fallen? The amount of times I've fallen in the steeplechase. I have fallen and messed up as many different ways as you can imagine. And I think that helps because whenever I go into it now, I'm like, well, I've fallen and it's fine. So I don't have to be afraid of it anymore. But yeah, as a junior in high school, I was a little crazy at this point in time, but I was like, I really think the steeplechase could be my race. And I set the Olympic trials qualifying time of 9:48 as my phone password. And
talk about manifestation.
Talk about manifestation. My sister Julia loves that.
Wow.
So I had 0948 as my password for those 4 years. And then my junior year, whenever I ran that 30-second PR, I ran a 9:48. It was actually insane. It was just God. Like literally it was just God. I just kind of left that moment and was just so kind of amazed by everything that was happening. And I didn't expect at all for it to qualify me for my first U.S. championships. And then I was all of a sudden 2 weeks later, I was on the line with my idols and having to really reframe my life and who I was after that and figure out who I wanted to be. And I think that that's what's really cool about the position that I'm in with getting to share my story too, is just sharing that whatever you set your mind to, you can do, and to chase your dreams. But yeah, that was a really, really crazy cool moment for sure.
Amazing. You make your visions your reality, which is super inspiring. Tell me about why you named your book The Player's Plate.
One thing that I've really learned throughout my journey is if you just set your goals and then give yourself time to kind of let them come to fruition in the way that they're meant to, things just happen the way that they're supposed to. And one of those things was the title being The Player's Plate. And I love the sound of it. I like how it kind of rolled off the tongue, but I didn't exactly know why it was so perfect until I started really putting it into the book and doing my final edits and realizing how perfect it was, because it tied in the core concept of the book, which is the importance of sharing the mental and emotional and psychological aspect of fueling that comes with trying to perform at your best as an athlete. I think there are a million different sources on, how you should eat, exactly what you should eat, and it's super overwhelming. But the hard part about a lot of athletes is more so dealing with the psychological pressures that come along with body image pressures or pressures from, coaches or parents or even just yourself. And so I actually split the book into 2 sections. And the first section is education on all the basics and fundamentals of sports nutrition. And the second half touches more on this emotional, psychological aspect of trying to fuel to your best performance as an athlete. And those are my favorite chapters because I think that's what really sets the book apart. And so the Player's Plate, the title actually ties in these 2 concepts of what's physically on your plate, and then obviously the saying of not putting too much on your plate at one time in life. And I think that's what a lot of athletes can fall victim to, because a lot of us are type A kind of overachievers wanting to do too much. And a lot of what helps with reaching your best performance and knowing what's right for fueling is really just simplifying it, taking a lot off of your plate. I think that the title, The Player's Plate, when I had first come up with it, I didn't really realize how perfect it was for tying in the concepts that I really wanted to emphasize. And then as I put the title on and was incorporating it throughout the book, I just realized how perfect it was.
Track is such an individual sport, so I would imagine that this book and what it does for your performance and your mental state was monumental within the track community. Tell me about your book tour.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So my book tour was so fun.
Yes.
I visited a few different cities this summer, and that's definitely something I'd like to do more of in the future after I graduate, because getting to actually connect and meet in person one-on-one with all of these, especially high school athletes, and kind of share my story and more so hear their stories was just so incredible and so influential on me to get to meet all of them.
What was it like doing it in Texas, a state that means so much to you?
Oh, it was so amazing. So whenever I got to do the book stop in Houston, I actually did it at a Fleet Feet. And it just meant so much because, I shopped at that Fleet Feet in high school, going to get my one pair of spikes that I used for all 4 years. And I was just so excited. And to get to come back there and to meet these athletes. Actually, my high school coach was coaching at a new high school, and his whole team came to my book stop and got, all of their copies autographed, and I got to meet all of them. And that was definitely a highlight of the book tour for sure. It was just a really full circle moment to get to be at home and sharing that, and got to meet some incredible young athletes too. So I really loved it.
In addition to your book, can you expand more on your social media and NIL presence?
Yes, for sure. So I actually got into social media more so because my older sister, Julia, who is an incredible country music artist in Nashville, she actually was telling me, Emily, you have to get TikTok. You have to share, the kind of behind the scenes of being a Duke athlete. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. It sounds like, I don't know, I've never been on TikTok. Doesn't sound like my vibe. And after 6 months of her telling me that, I finally caved and just started kind of sharing my story and different tips. I remember one of my first few videos that kind of did well was like 3 tips to run a faster mile. And I would just say these like random little tips like that, just help people out with their running. And I honestly just kind of have a knack for it. I love social media and video creation, and I didn't realize how much I would love it and kind of enjoy the creation process. And I fully attribute me getting into it because of Julia and getting to see her share her music career through social media as well, because it's so important for her to get her music out, to be able to create and share her songs through social media. She definitely has been an incredible role model and peer to kind of bounce ideas off of and bounce my thoughts off of throughout the whole process.
Emily, you now have almost 200,000 followers on Instagram. What is the hardest part about being an influencer, and how have you learned to overcome these obstacles?
That is a great question. I feel like last track season, last spring, I documented a little hair crisis on my social media platforms.
I was going to ask about that one for sure.
Small detail. And that was probably the craziest time in my life, because my social media followings essentially doubled throughout that 2-week period and went from about 250,000 across platforms to 500,000. So it was like 200,000 on Instagram, 300,000 on TikTok. And again, it's more of this more introverted life of just creating your videos and like kind of sharing your life with the world. And then all of a sudden I was like, wow, this is a lot of people. And so I think that once that happened, I really started realizing the reach and the impact that I could have with my words and my story. And it was definitely overwhelming through that track season. I was dealing with a lot and having to go through a lot. I think that it really forced me to grow up a lot faster and realize who I wanted to be. And that's one of the harder parts about social media is, as humans, we're not meant to be around thousands of people every single day all the time. And on social media, you're just exposed to so many different people and so many different things. You can be like, oh, I should be doing this like this person, or I want to do this a little bit more because it's working for her, instead of realizing and remembering what worked well for you in the first place. And over the past semester, I've actually taken a step back a lot from sharing as much on social media in the ways that I had before all of this happened. And it's been a really cool growth process for me to just remember who I am. And social media in general can just be a big, hard comparison game. And so what I really just love about my platforms and social media is kind of sharing the positive side of it and reminding people why social media can be such a great thing, and sharing the happiness and the joy of running with everyone else, and kind of why I fell in love with the sport in the first place.
With your social media and being an influencer, you really have to own who you are and put yourself on the line. How have you balanced the judgments and any negative energy towards you and who you are?
I went to the NIL Summit a couple of years ago, and that was the inaugural NIL Summit, first time ever. And I met so many incredible athletes there, athlete creators there, and having them to get to talk to about it and kind of just relate about the things that you go through as an athlete creator and this judgment and this criticism from the outside world has been invaluable. I've made some of the best connections of my life with these people, and to share on social media. I remember seeing a post one time that was really impactful to me, and it was all about how sharing on social media, it's so funny because a lot of people will kind of push it off as like an insecurity kind of a thing, but to be able to share on social media and be so self-sure in who you are actually takes a level of confidence in yourself that is really brave. And getting to meet all these other people at the summit who had done that and understood kind of what that process is like, putting yourself out there and really owning every aspect of yourself and not letting what anyone else has to say kind of change your view of yourself or who you are, was a really incredible experience. And I'm really, really grateful I got to experience that.
Emily, as your social media life picked up, so did NIL for you. What does NIL mean to you?
NIL, to me, the most beautiful piece about it is the visibility that it is bringing to women's sports. I think it is so incredible how much it is helping the world to realize how incredible women's sports is. And I am so grateful for the role that I've kind of got into play in these first few years of NIL. I had no idea that this was going to happen while I was a college athlete. And I had no idea that my book would end up being published right whenever NIL started. So I would be allowed to speak about my experience here at Duke. But I've gotten to be a part of so many different women's empowerment campaigns and see the exponential growth of women's sports over the past few years. And what's really cool is I have an amazing agency that I work with, Raymond Representation, and it's been so cool to see how much they have leaned into the female athlete creator, because brands love working with female athletes. And it's been so cool to see how much better kind of our content does. And whenever we are, advertising for a product or trying to share a message, a lot of the girls are just kind of better at social media too. And so it's better for the brands to work with us. And what I love to remind people about sports is a lot of people who are more invested in men's sports just know the stories of all of these male athletes. And social media has given female athletes the platform to be able to share their own stories and get the audiences excited about women's sports. And so
excited about steeplechase.
Excited about the steeplechase, yes. And so now women's sports are selling out. And like Caitlin Clark, I think it's this weekend, they have the highest price ever for a women's basketball game.
$10,000.
$10,000.
For a floor seat.
That is insane. I love it because she's going to break the all-time scoring record. And just seeing this growth of women's sports because of this era of NIL has been such an incredible experience, something so beautiful to witness firsthand.
Absolutely. You recently spoke about the NIL Summit. You also spoke at that event. Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, so at that event, I got to speak about financial literacy. And my oldest sister, Kristen, she's super passionate about it. And obviously majoring in econ and going into finance. And I do have a minor in econ, so I didn't completely not do what she did, but I got to speak about just the importance of understanding personal finance. And that's obviously a huge piece of this new era of NIL, is creating more education around investing and understanding how to manage your money as a college athlete. And I'm really grateful that I got to speak on that panel and talk about having a Roth IRA and, what the S&P 500 is and the importance of student athletes and even just college students in general starting to understand these concepts more and how important of a life skill it is. It was such an incredible experience to get to sit on that stage next to such incredible people like Taylor Rooks, who is an incredible sports analyst, and I have so much respect for all of the work she does before all of her interviews. And she was the moderator for our panel, and I was so impressed by her even before and after. She's just an incredible person. So, maybe one day I'll get to, do something like that too. I don't know, but that experience was really awesome. And I got to make such incredible contacts from that conference as well. I am so glad I got to be there for those few days. It was actually the week before USA's. And so I remember going into the hotel gym and having to crank like an 11-mile track workout.
I remember seeing that video. That's so funny that you mentioned that.
It was so funny. Yeah, my friend Will Levis, he was actually like in there lifting. He was a quarterback at Kentucky at the time. And I was just cranking out this track workout on the trail. I remember him looking at me and I was like, this is so embarrassing. And yeah, just really funny experience. And then the next week I ran at USA. So I'm really glad that my coaches allowed me to still get to have that experience, even though I was still finishing out my season.
The duality of being a student athlete and an influencer and an NIL icon, casual.
You're too kind.
So you work with various brands, one being Therabody. Tell me about this.
Yes, so my Therabody partnership actually started that spring of my junior year here at Duke, and so excited, so ecstatic, because I just love all their products and I love the messaging behind their company as well. They really, really value just wellness and recovery, and they're even branching out into just overall wellness with beauty as well too. And so it kind of started out with that. And whenever I got to meet the team and on that Zoom call, whenever I first met them, and they were telling me about how to hold the Theragun in the shoot and how to make sure that I was saying the messaging right in my interview and things like that, I really just hit it off with the team and loved all of them. I loved the family aspect of their company too. And I ended up following up and really letting them know that I would love to do an individual partnership as well. And so that next year we announced my partnership with Therabody, which was just a dream come true. I've absolutely loved working with them. And last year on my 22nd birthday, they actually came here and did our photo shoot on my birthday. And it was like 30 degrees outside, and we're outside in the freezing cold, and I'm out there for like 4 hours running around through the albular loop around the Waduke, getting these shots for all of their content and everything. And it was so funny because they're all like, I'm so sorry it's so cold, but I had a great time with them. They're all so amazing, and it's just been such a joy and blessing to get to work with them.
In regards to NIL, what are your next steps?
That's a great question. I love that. So my agency actually represents a lot of creators too. So post their collegiate careers and whatever they're kind of continuing to work with brands. And what I love about social media is that if you're willing to put the time in and bet on yourself and build your personal brand, is that it allows you to chase your dreams and kind of for a long time and do what really makes you fulfilled and happy and passionate about. So I'm not exactly sure how NIL is going to continue to play in my life after I graduate. I'm really just trying to soak up this last semester as much as I can, but I'm really excited about it and the options that I have in mind.
Emily, when you go to track meets here or away or at Duke track camps in the summer, there are girls lined up waiting to meet you. What is it like being a role model within the track community?
It's funny. I'm laughing so much because my past two like warm-ups that I've gone out to do in my past two track meets, I've like gotten stopped for pictures to go out to my warm-up. And it's just so funny and so sweet. I'm like, can you find me after my race, please? I'd love to meet you, but I've got to be locked in right now. It's just been incredible. You know, obviously there's a lot of pressure to be a role model. I am grateful for the opportunity, and it definitely is a lot of pressure, but pressure is a privilege, and I realize that. And I've just really taken the opportunity to do my best to elevate women's sports and share this message that you can do whatever you set your mind to. And I'm really just grateful for the platform and grateful for the incredible women that I've had to look up to and see as examples on how to be great role models to the younger girls who want to chase big dreams like we did.
Emily, you are so amazing. I think you may be a role model for me as well.
Oh my gosh, same here.
What does Duke mean to you, and what does Duke track mean to you?
I think the most beautiful thing about Duke is that everyone here is so incredibly accomplished on their own and such great people, but they also are your biggest cheerleaders. And I really just feel such a family aspect here on this campus. Everyone is so supportive and kind and wanting to hear your story and just celebrate each other. And I love the tie between the intense academics and the intense athletics here too. Just the culture around basketball and now football and all of our women's sports popping off. Field hockey. I mean,
Woo-woo.
Snaps for field hockey, y'all really went off. But I think being a part of such an incredible student athlete community has been such an honor and such a unique experience, and you know, getting to experience different ACC championships here too. Like, it's honestly been such a dream, and I'm just so grateful for the time that I've gotten to have here. And being a part of Duke Track especially has been amazing because our team is such a family, and I'm so grateful for that. And honestly, I've been getting really emotional this last semester because I'm just getting really sad about, you know, realizing that I'm going to be leaving it soon and leaving this family and these people. And obviously they'll be my family forever after this, but it's not the same whenever you're not in person every day, and just really trying to soak up every last second that I have, which is something that was a goal of mine all 4 years at Duke. And so finally getting to be in that position and really feel like I've kind of grown the culture of the team in the way that I wanted to over my time here at Duke. It's been so beautiful to see and so incredible to experience the excellence that Duke Track now has kind of seen as like a standard.
Emily, you've earned it, and the impact that you've made on Duke is quite indescribable. What would you say, this being your last semester at Duke, is your next steps?
You know, I get that question approximately every day now. I am really not sure what the future holds for me afterwards. I'm really excited about, you know, the different paths that I could take. I definitely want to continue running. I definitely want to be surrounded by people that continue to inspire me and push me to be the best version of myself that I can be. And I'm not sure what city that will be in, but as of now, I'm just really trying to soak up every last second of this last semester and make the most of these last few months with my teammates.
Emily, you are going to change every community that you walk into. You are an amazing second guest on True Blue Podcast, and we are so lucky to have you, and I can't wait to see what your future holds. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Shelby. This has been absolutely incredible. Such an honor to get to speak with you, and I just cannot wait to keep watching the rest of the episodes too.
Woohoo! Go Duke.
Woo!